Hi everyone, my name is Danny and I do all types of YouTube videos. For this series, if you've watched some of my previous videos, I've recently reviewed every film in the Star Wars movie franchise, right? So to be more specific, I've reviewed episode 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, and 9, and I've also reviewed Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, and what I've been doing is since all of these Star Wars movies came out on Disney Plus, it's just very convenient. So I've been watching all of these Star Wars movies through Disney Plus, and for some reason, Solo. The movie Solo, A Star Wars Story, it was only released on Disney Plus maybe about 2 weeks ago. And so that was the only movie of that franchise that I haven't watched because it wasn't released on Disney Plus. So now that it's out, I just recently watched it. I think I watched it last week, and so today I'm just going to review the movie. So it's pretty satisfying because as a kid, growing up and being gifted all of these toys and stuff. So as a kid, it was just all about the toys, and definitely always be a major component in my life, but never having really watched any of the movies, right? Except for just those small clips on TV that come on every once in a while. And really, that is just a horrible way, really, to watch Star Wars movies, because you just really get not only an incomplete version, but you tend to kind of stereotype things. For example, if you think of the prequels and how people sort of just generalize and say, oh, well, they sucked because it was all just CGI, right? So if you're just watching TV and you see one of those clips, let's just say, you'll probably see, that maybe, for example, that clip at the end where Darth Vader sort of lays in that lava pit, sort of, and it's very easy for you to say, oh well, all the prequels are just CGI garbage, but it's important really for you to not only watch all the movies, the whole movie from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, but it's also important to watch all the movies. And for me, just the way my mind works, it was important for me to watch the movies in the correct order, right? So I watched them here. So I watched them, for me, I watched them in the order of as they were released, right? So, meaning I watched them in the order of A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, then Return of the Jedi, then The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, then The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. And then I watched Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and then Solo, a Star Wars story. So it's like it's also important to because there's so many movies and two standalone movies. It's important to like not only watch them all, but to have a good understanding of them because like they're all interrelated, and like if you're missing things or not understanding things or even not watching the whole movie, you're kind of going to be lost. Well, not really lost, but there's going to be chunks in the franchise that you're just not going to get or not going to understand. And also, you're not going to get like the full experience of it. You're not going to get the full satisfaction out of all of these movies, right? So, so just a few things. I just wanted to say that you know, just doing a lot of these YouTube videos, you know, when it comes to like the equipment that you use and stuff, it's just trial and error. So having like watched a lot of my previous YouTube videos and also other people's YouTube videos, like regarding volume or audio, when you're watching a YouTube video or any type of video, or even just listening to someone speak, you do not want the video audio to be too low, right? Because like there's nothing worse than not being able to properly hear the audio or what someone is saying because they're not loud enough, or to not hear them at all. And so I've been told when you do public speaking or teaching, people will say like there's no such thing as being too loud. So I just want to say that like it's hard for me to gauge like what my equipment audio is processing. So I'm just going to speak like a little louder because I do not want this audio to be too low. So if when this video pops up, comes out, if like the way the volume in my voice seems a little too high, I apologize for that, but I'd rather it be too loud than too low. But that's why I'm speaking a little louder. And so, yeah, like as you can see, like I'm even now in 2020, I'm still like a pretty big Star Wars fan, right? So I have this lovely poster that I have here. This is the logo here is Star Wars: The Force Awakens. You know, pretty much sums it up. And like in previous videos, this is one of my props. It's Darth Vader, and this is that iconic scene, I'm pretty sure, in The Empire Strikes Back, when Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, they start dueling with their lightsabers. Here you can see where the lightsabers cut off like that, those sort of pipes, and then Darth Vader is sort of leaning over and eventually says something like, Luke, I am your father, join me and together we will rule the galaxy. And this actually is a toy where there's a button that you press, and usually when it works, Darth Vader will say that. He will say, Luke, I am your father, or together we can rule the galaxy, something like that. But when I first bought it, it was working, but after time, for some reason, even when I have fresh new batteries in it, it's just not working anymore. So I think there's a little disconnect or something like that. But it's still nice just to still have it sort of as a novelty anyway. So so that light that sort of just went off, it's just sort of a weird light that I have where it's sort of, for some reason, it just goes off and on, but in a couple seconds, it'll probably just automatically pop on again. And so with my previous videos, it's sort of weird with these videos. Practice makes perfect, because you can, just by doing them, you just get better at them. And so just watching like my previous movie review videos, like I said this before, where like whenever you're doing these types of videos, you want to be prepared beforehand, because a lot of the times, what will happen is that you'll get the video going, and then due to just there being so much content, you'll forget things that you wanted to mention, or the order won't be as organized as you'd like to be, or there'll be details that you forgot or completely missed. And so what I did before is that I would sort of write everything down beforehand. But the problem with that is that when you kind of write things down, sometimes you tend to kind of just literally read the stuff. And so when you're making a video like this, or even talking to someone in general, right, you don't really want to be just reading something or just looking down like at a bunch of papers, right? You kind of want to kind of be as if you're speaking to someone, like making eye contact. So I sort of, for this one, I wanted to do something different so it doesn't appear as if I'm just looking down and reading something, right? So what I did here was, you can't see it, but I have, again, I'm doing all these videos through Disney Plus, including this movie, Solo: A Star Wars Story. So I'm sort of watching it through Disney Plus, and so what I'm doing actually here is I have the Disney Plus movie on my screen, like right here, just right here in front of me. You can't see it, and so what I'm going to do is that like I'm just going to, on my own, I'm going to be sort of just fast forwarding through the movie. And then as the movie goes, I'm just going to comment on the more important parts of the movie, or the parts of the movie that I found interesting or worth talking about. And so what I'm doing here is I'm watching Disney Plus through my Xbox One. And so this is my new controller. And if you've watched one of my most recent videos, I unboxed this. I did an unboxing video of this, and so this is the Xbox Elite Series, the Elite Series 2 controller, and it's definitely a great controller, by the way. I'm not going to go over it because it's not the topic of this video, and I've already done an unboxing video. But since I've done that unboxing video, and it was brand new, and it's been a few weeks now, this has been great. It's definitely worth the money. But yeah, I'm just going to use the controller here to fast forward it. And, like YouTube is just getting more and more strict when it comes to like copyright, right? Like, not only can you like not have any copyrighted music or even maybe sounds, you definitely cannot have like any copyrighted images or video, right? So it would be nice, like if I was able to show the movie of what I'm looking at through a screen, or just a screen in the screen, but unfortunately I can't do that because I would just get a strike for copyright. Okay, so I'm just going to get right into it because I don't want this video to be too long. So here I have it. So in the beginning, it's funny because I just thought of one thing that I wanted to talk about, is that before I get into it, is that I'm not really like into even just sequel movies, like even like a part two. That's just not my thing because, you know, kind of people want a movie is successful on the actual movie, right? So when people think of making another movie, right, like just that concept of like making a different movie that somehow kind of take like carries over the success from the previous movie, like it just doesn't even seem possible, even in that simplicity, right? And then for many reasons, like, and then making like a part three and stuff like that. However, like, and so I'm definitely really not like much of a supporter of like these standalone movies, right? And so they made, I like to get the terminology right, so I'm always going to go back on my iPad and make sure that I'm terming these, I'm using the right terminology. And so when they came up and they made like Rogue One and Solo, you know, I'm like, oh, like damn, like why are they like making these movies, right? Because like it's just so much work for like us just normal viewers to be able to just watch like the main movies, and there are so many movies in the main franchise, right? And then like for them to just keep piling them up, right? And kind of like you think of like the cartoon series, right? Like I mean, I don't really think that was really needed. Or if you think of like the series now, The Mandalorian, right? Like I don't really think that any of that is really needed. It's just like it's not only confusing for viewers, and although they'll always say that it sort of there's no interference of the main movies, you can't by watching if someone watches the cartoon series or the Mandalorian series, like I mean, you cannot help but try to make connections and confuse things in and intertwine them with the main series, right? Even if they kind of say, oh, well, they're all separate, right? And also too, like, in my opinion, they're devaluing the whole like franchise too by just making too much. They're just diluting it by saturating it, right? And then like, so it's just like they come up with like Rogue One and Solo, same thing, right? And like, but I can say that like just scrolling through it and asking myself, do I really want to watch Rogue One or do I really want to watch Solo, right? And so like, you know, one day, you know, I'm just like scrolling through Twitter and this one random tweet kind of struck me, and this one like person tweeted out like, Rogue One was good, but I like Solo better, right? And for some reason that really struck with me where like because when I watched Rogue One, I loved it, right? I just loved it. It just, for some reason, like I just found it a really great movie. And then like, but you know, Solo, just the idea of it never really appealing to me because like Han Solo is more of a minor character, and like although like he was definitely necessary like in his charisma for the movies that he was in, especially for the original trilogy, like he was more of a minor character, and like I never really felt that like having a whole movie based on him was of any interest to me, right? But after like watching the movie, mainly actually the only reason I watched it was because, like I said, I wanted to watch all the movies, and it was just one of those. It was included as one of the major movies, right, of the franchise. And so after watching it, like I really liked it, right? I really did like it, but I just also want to mention that um, um, although like Rogue One was really successful, like Solo ended up being um, a box office failure. It was like it was the lowest grossing movie of all the Star Wars movies, right? And it was also one of the most expensive movies ever made, like in general, right? So like in a way like I'm kind of glad that like it did badly in the box office because um, it's just sort of telling the it's a signal of the fans that are just saying like, you know, you guys are just doing too many of this extra stuff, right? And from what I read, they were also in the development of making a Boba Fett standalone story too, which I don't think was ever really a need for a Boba Fett movie either. But because Solo did so badly in the box office, at the box office, the Boba Fett standalone story was canceled, and it should be too, right? So yeah, like I guess it just sort of makes sense. And even if you think of like Solo, right, which like even the timeline of when it was released, of when it was made and released, it's just horrible timing, right? Like I'm just looking at the timeline, and so like Solo was released in May of 20 in May Solo was released in May of 2018, and here if you look at the final movies of the sequel trilogy, right? So The Force Awakens was released in December 2015. The Last Jedi was released in December 2017, and then The Rise of Skywalker was released in December of 2019. So like to release Solo like in between like those last two movies, like isn't that terrible timing too? Like when like people like me are just kind of saying like we're definitely excited that you know the final sequel trilogy movies are finally like coming to an end and we want to watch them, but then it's kind of like we're getting ready to watch them and then they come up with this extra standalone movie that's in between like the last two, right? Like it just doesn't make sense, right? So for me, it's just reasons like that why like people like me would never like go to the movie theater and watch that. Like, but anyways, so I want to get into the movie and say, yeah. So like I'm looking at that opening scroll or whatever they call it. You know, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And here, let's see. Okay, it is a lawless time. Crime syndicates compete for resources, food, medicine, and hyperfuel. On the shipbuilding planet of Corellia, the foul lady Proxima forces runaways into a life of crime in exchange for shelter and protection. On these mean streets, a young man fights for survival, but yearns to fly among the stars. Okay. So here, so like I said, I'm just going to try to like focus on the more important scenes, which I feel are viable for talking about. And so right from that opening scene, where Han Solo is on that kind of that hyper sort of ship, right, that you see a lot in A New Hope and stuff like that. Those kind of like ships, that hovercraft, are just so amazing, right? And very similar as to the one, in that opening scene. And then you have that evil lady, kind of looks like, to me, is just like a big like snake. That was kind of a interesting looking character. Not only visually, but her personality was pretty neat too, right? And I watched this movie like a week ago, so there's already things that I can't even like remember. But honestly, like I cannot really sort of even remember like what her role in it was in relation to Han Solo. I think it was, if I had to guess, she ordered him to steal something. Maybe could be again, I want to look this up and make sure that I get all of the, coaxium, right, the fuel. Anyways. And so I'm at the point now where Han Solo and his then girlfriend are at the station, and they want to escape. So Han Solo has a stolen vial of the fuel, which is called again. Coaxium, right? And then Han Solo bribes the Imperial officer with that vial of coaxium and gets on the ship. But his then girlfriend, the name being Kira, right? And Kira is interesting because it didn't occur to me when I was watching the movie. I was like, she looks so familiar. I know her. And I just looked it up on Wikipedia. And she was also on Terminator Genesis, right? So, which was another movie, too, that I liked. And so, Kira gets caught by the security, so she can't board the plane. And then Solo gets through, right? And it's kind of interesting, when you see the scene here where Solo is trying to bribe the Imperial officer. Like, that officer is dressed just like that 1977 movie of A New Hope, and all of the buttons and like the technology in the back is the same as that 1977 sort of look, right? And so And so later on, like 3 years later, when Han is serving as an infantryman on Nimbom after being expelled from the Imperial Flight Academy for insubordination, he encounters a group of criminals posing as Imperial soldiers led by Tobias Beckett, right? And then Han attempts to blackmail Beckett into letting him join the gang, but Beckett has him arrested and thrown into a pit to be fed to Wookiee prisoner named Chewbacca. So definitely an interesting scene there where Han Solo befriends Chewbacca and how that relationship began, and how like it was revealed that Solo was able to use his understanding of the Chewbacca language, the Wookiee language, right? And then their plan that Beckett needs to steal a shipment of the fuel, coaxium, right? So the precious fuel at the time was coaxium, and so Beckett was ordered by his the crime boss, Dryden Voss, and he's trying to steal the coaxium from that coaxium was on Vandor 1, right? And then Enfys Nest, the leader of the pirates, they hijack the shipment, and then Beckett's wife dies and Rio dies, and the coaxium was destroyed. Now that was a pretty amazing scene, right? Kind of reviewing it right here. The way that there was that train and stuff like that, and how it was chased in the air by all the pirates. That was just an amazing scene too. And however, I still don't quite understand as to the reason why Beckett's wife had to kind of commit suicide by exploding that part of the rails. It still doesn't really make sense to me as to like why that part of the rails had to be destroyed, and therefore her to be suicidal like that. I don't know why that would have really made a difference. And then here, where then they go and actually see Dryden Voss on his yacht, and that yacht it was just amazing to look at, like the architecture even from the outside, and then also the inside too, right? And then like inside the yacht, the scene where it's kind of like the bar, typical Star Wars bar scene, and that person is singing in the bar, and the creatures in that like tub of water, sort of. I still think that, even though you see that in a lot of other Star Wars movies, it's still interesting to look at, right? And then how like Solo meets again his girlfriend, his then girlfriend, Kira, right? Kind of a very big coincidence. I think that was maybe pushing it a little too far. How, they just happened to meet like that. But it's just a movie, right? And then yeah, and then when Dryden Voss orders Kira to go with Han Solo, in order for them to steal like that other shipment of coaxium, right? And so then Kyra says, okay, if we want to like get there to be able to steal that this new shipment of coaxium, we need to get there. And so Kira says, let's go find Han Solo. Let's go find Lando Calrissian, right? And so, when you watch like the previous movies, Han Solo, when he first meets Lando, it's kind of like the dialogue is, oh yeah, like we're like great friends, old friends, like because of what happened like in the past, right? And so like watching this movie sort of just bridges those gaps as to like what their connection was. And so the scene here where like Lando always sort of was that interesting, mysterious person with that sort of two-sided sort of charisma to him. And so when you see him, how they introduce him as a first impression, and see like where he's from and stuff, and the gambling and all of the partying and the alcohol and stuff like that. It sort of just like makes more sense to you when you see like, and then it's interesting because when Lando Calrissian provides the Millennium Falcon, right? So that iconic ship, right? And the Millennium Falcon was sort of always like in the previous movies sort of presented sort of as sort of a piece of junk, literally, like Luke Skywalker called it, like kind of a piece of junk, right? Where it was always kind of like a freighter, right? But somehow ended up being like used in, the top battles in Star Wars. And so it was always sort of, it was an interesting, like the ship was always interesting looking, but like the concept was it was an old, like crappy, outdated ship. But I like the way that they portrayed it, especially in the beginning when, how Han Solo first gets into it, and like the ship is just amazing, right? Like the way it still has that like iconic retro look of, of that 1977 movie, A New Hope, but like, it's just like, even though it was still based on that 1977 sort of timeline, like the look of it, especially for then, was just amazing, right? Like the modernization for it back then, and the technology for a movie in the 1970s, and also like there's a lot of other spaces and rooms and stuff like that that was never shown before, right? and like the rooms where you can not only like sleep in and stuff like that, but like hang out with. And so the Millennium Falcon, when you see it this way, you kind of wanted it to finally look like this, but yeah. And in many ways, it was still the same ship, right? How that sort of chess game with the holographs was still shown again, right? And so the scene where when they finally get to that planet of Kessel, right? That was still a really cool scene when they get on Kessel, and then Lando's droid co-pilot L337 instigates the slave revolt, and then because of that confusion, they steal the Coaxium, and then L3 is fatally damaged, and Lando's wounded. But then they use L3's navigational computer to be hot-wired into the ship's system, right? So that's why I guess they decided to kill off L3 so that they could put her into the ship systems, right? And then they go into the Kessel Run to evade that Imperial blockade, and then they finally go to Savareen to process the Coaxium, right? And now that I think about it, sort of as they were going through the Kessel Run, like when I watched it a week ago, I think there was still a scene that still confuses me where they're flying through and it's like this huge like forest, right? And then one of them on the ship, like I think it was Lando, said something like, have you ever seen this? And so I don't know, that part still confuses me. I'm going to have to look back into that. Yeah, and Kessel is really interesting too. Reminds me a lot of Tatooine, right? Kind of like a desert and like the old school like infrastructure, right? And then on Kessel, Empress Ness and her pirates get there, right? And you remember one of the pirates on Empress Ness's team, they order that pirate to stick a homing beacon, I think it's called that, like the tracker, and the tracker was put on the Millennium Falcon, so that's how they ended up following them, and they found them on Kessel, right? Yeah. So Envis and her team, yeah, she reveals that they're trying to like strike back at the syndicates and the Empire, and so Han Solo becomes sympathetic to Emphas and the pirates and the Rebel Alliance, and decides that he wants to give that stolen coaxium to Emphas and the Rebel Alliance, and not to who he's supposed to give it back to his Dryden boss, right? And that was very daring of Solo, because kind of a big theme of the thing was like, if Dryden Voss, like if you're hired by Dryden Voss and you don't fulfill like the mission, Dryden Voss is literally going to kill you, right? So that was pretty daring of Han Solo, right? And so here, like, if I remember right, so Han Solo decides that he wants to betray Dryden Voss. So Han Solo goes into Dryden Voss's yacht with what Han Solo thought was fake coaxium, right? Fake coaxium. But then Beckett decides to double cross Han Solo, right? Because Beckett's just in it for himself, right? And so Beckett alerts Dryden Voss about Han Solo giving him fake coaxium. And if I'm right, because of that, Dryden Voss and Beckett end up making the coaxium, the real coaxium that Han Solo brings, right? But then what Beckett does is Beckett is a real snake, right? And then so Beckett decides to double cross again, and double crosses Dryden Voss to steal like the real coaxium for himself, right? I gotta just double check that to make sure I'm getting that right. Yeah, and I also missed the part where Lando Calrissian just takes off with the Millennium Falcon. You know, that's the sort of his character, right? Just deserves him like that. And then Voss sends his guards to kill Enfys, but the Cloud Rider power is overpowering him, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Beckett decides to take the coaxium. Beckett decides to betray Voss and take the coaxium for himself, taking Chewbacca hostage, so that because Chewbacca is strong and he can carry the coaxium, right? And then so Kira tells Han Solo to go after Beckett, right? And then it's kind of interesting because in one of the initial scenes, you see Dryden Voss bring out those blades that he has, that double knife, and he kind of kills just someone else, a random person. And then sort of like those blades, those like futuristic, digitized like lifesaver like blades or knives, which is really cool the way he brought them out again, right? And tried to, if I'm right, yeah, he tries to like kill Han Solo with those blades, but then Kyra actually kills Voss, and that was pretty like an amazing scene. How Kyra ends up like stabbing him to death like that, right? And it was always weird because it was always sort of the an uncertainty with Kyra, right? Because you remember how she just appeared just on his yacht, and even though sort of there was that past relationship with Kyra and Solo before, you kind of wonder if she was indoctrinated into like that syndicate, right? And she kind of like in the scene where, you know, she's about to, or she pretends that she's going to stab and kill Solo, but then decides to instead stab and kill Dryden Voss. And then that scene where so Kyra decides to contact Voss's superior, Voss's boss, the former Sith Lord Maul, to inform her of the mission's failure, and she blames it on Beckett. I think she said that Beckett killed Dryden Voss, and then Maul orders Kyra to meet with him on Dathomir, right? So, and sort of the storyline of Kyra in this movie ends there. So to me, it's interesting to know like what happens next with Kyra, like where when she does meet with the Sith Lord Maul and what happens. I cannot remember if that was already shown in one of the prequels or one of the other movies, right? Or the timeline was just so far apart that it couldn't be included, but that would have been interesting for me to see. Would have been interesting. And then yeah, I kind of did like that scene where Solo confronts Beckett, and then Solo literally shot and killed Beckett. He really had no choice, I think. Although he had no choice but to kill him, like, I like those types of scenes, but it's still surprising because this is a Disney movie, right? And in Disney movies, you kind of don't really see like murders or killings like that, especially more like direct ones. So although it was surprising for me to see that in a Disney movie, I still liked it. It was definitely necessary, like for Solo to kill Beckett, right? And then and then in the end, how Solo goes back to Lando Calrissian and they gamble, and then Solo wins the gambling wins the Millennium Falcon, right? However, it's just a little interesting because, like, I'm reading some of the literature here on the movie, and when Han Solo gave Enfys Nest that stolen coaxium, which was a lot, and then Enfys Nest decides to just gift Solo with one vial of coaxium. But in the literature that I'm reading here, like, it says that not only that small little vial of coaxium could have bought him his own ship, but that's why it seems like possibly Enfys Nest gave him that vial of coaxium so that he could buy a ship, right? So, like, why would Han Solo, like, why couldn't he just use that vial of coaxium just to simply just go and buy him a ship, right? Like, why would he still feel the need to go all the way and find Lando Calrissian and then, like, still, like, gamble for, like, that Millennium Falcon? And if I remember right, too, like, he uses that vial of that small vial of coaxium sort of as a gambling token, too. Like, could he not have just, like, bought the whole Millennium Falcon with that vial? Like, was there a real need for him to, like, gamble that vial off? So that was just a little strange to me. And, but anyway, it was kind of neat the way, like, when they were gambling and they Lando used that stolen card, like, not only in the first gambling scene, right, but in the other one too, it seems that Solo used that stolen card to sort of win it. And if I remember right, I just want to look up I just wanted to look up what was the purpose of that first gambling scene. Okay, it says here, Kyra, it says, Kyra leads them to Lando Calrissian, a smuggler and pilot, who she hopes will lend them his ship, the Millennium Falcon. Han Solo challenges Lando to a game of sabacc, with the wager being Lando's ship, which is the Millennium Falcon. Lando cheats to win, but agrees to join the mission in exchange for a share of the profits. Okay. So that first gambling scene. So my video just ran out of time, but I'm just going to continue and start off again. And I was saying that I was just trying to look up what was the purpose of that first gambling scene. And so I was just saying that the first gambling scene, the purpose of that was to gamble so that Han Solo could try to win the Millennium Falcon, right? But Lando Calrissian cheated and won, but because Lando was greedy, he wanted to go anyways because he would get a share of the profits when they stole the coaxium, right? So it ended up, so Lando ended up like using the Millennium Falcon with them anyways. All right. So as you can see, like, so that's pretty much the end of it. So this move, like making a video like this is kind of tricky because I want to keep it like as short as possible, but because like all Star Wars movies to me are kind of complex, and I'm the type of person where like I need to understand things, and if I'm doing a video or not, I'm going to be the same way where I'm going to have to look things up, right? And so like as you can see, it's just like not really that easy because like, you know, I'm watching the movie and then like I always have to feel the need to look things up and stuff like that. But anyways, I thought it was like a really good movie, and I really did like the movie a lot. If I had to ask myself like what I saw on Twitter, like which movie's better of the standalone movies, like Rogue One or Solo, like it's hard for me to say like which one is better, right? Because Rogue One, I loved Rogue One, but like Rogue One to me just like it was so satisfying because it just fit into the timeline so well, and it sort of like filled in those missing pieces, and also too like the cinematography and the costume design, like how they fit it into like that 1977 era with that touch of modernization. And it's sort of the same thing with Solo too, right? They still like kept a lot of that like nostalgic 1977 feel, like with the costume design and like the design of the Millennium Falcons and all of that. But like Solo was just interesting too, with like the coaxium and the difference between it being refined and unrefined, right? And like the action scenes too, where there were more action scenes than there were with Rogue One. So both good movies. Like I can't really say which one is better, but I do really recommend it. So I'm just gonna wrap it up, and because I don't want this video to go on too long, and just wanted to say thanks a lot for watching this YouTube video. Thanks for watching all of my YouTube videos, and make sure that you subscribe. So hit that subscribe button and hit the notifications. So there's like 3 different categories of notifications. So hit on all notifications so that you get all the notifications, so that whenever I post a video, you'll get a notification that I posted, so that you can watch it right away. So that by the time you watch it, it won't be outdated. Yeah. So I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's about it. I'm just gonna end it and say, may the force be with you.